Sai Krishna, you can disable your video. Video is not needed. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I request you all to mute your microphones. Whenever you have a doubt, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the doubt. There is a person who has joined the session with the name HP. I request you to mute yourself and specify your full name. Thank you. We'll start in another 2 minutes, guys. Please. Mute your microphone, please.
Yeah, hi guys. Good evening, everyone. Okay, so I believe we started the discussion. So the next part. So let's wait for a few minutes. Let other folks join in. We'll start.
Shravan, actually, everyone else has joined. There are 5 to 6 people who have joined today to experience the live session. You can actually start it off.
Okay. Okay, so let me share my screen and start for today. So in the previous class, we have discussed the one thing, the architecture of Linux, and the second one would be the commands which we use in Linux. So two things which we have discussed in the previous class, right? So in this class, what we will be doing is, let's finish up the theory discussion. The leftover concepts is, the one thing is user and group management. And the second one would be the permission concepts. And the final one would be the package installations. Right? So let me finish off this theory discussion and I will walk through how to create a AWS free tier account. So how to create AWS free tier account. And once everything has been done, so tomorrow we're going to start the practicals case. Whatever we've discussed till date, everything we'll implement in practicals. And after that, we'll work on some real-time projects in it, right? So let's finish off these three theory concepts which we have left, right? So let's start with this user and group management. User and group management. So basically, user and group management, right? So let's take one at a time, right? So first focus on user management.
Shravan, your voice is not so clear actually like earlier.
Is it okay now?
Somewhat good. And just a small announcement. Guys, I request you all to specify your names. I'm seeing still some people with the device names like Oppo A83 and all that. I request you to specify your name, please. Thank you. Yeah, you can carry on.
Yeah.
And there are few people who are using the pen and they are writing something. So please avoid doing it. Please experience the class. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with the discussion of user management. So user management. So guys, anytime came across this users case. So any idea what you mean by users and groups? Anyone came across this user and groups keyword anytime?
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So let me give some explanation. So basically, user management is something to provide some accessibility on that particular service or the service, right? So if you want to provide some service, if you want to provide some access on the server, then we will go with the concept called user management, right? So user management is something which will be used for creating some user accounts, creating some passwords. So these are the few things which we will do for the user management, right? So the first thing what we will do is I created a Linux machine, but I need to have some kind of access. I need to have some kind of access. So how do I access, guys? So by creating some user account, by creating some password, then I can access my Linux machine, right? So with the help of user management, I will be able to create a user account and I will be able to create a password. By having this username and password, I would be accessing my Linux machine, right? So this is the first point you have to consider. So this is the first point you have to consider, right? So the first thing is creation of user account. So in Linux, how do we do it, guys? We have a command called user add, and you have to specify the username. Any name you can specify, right? So let me keep it as test, right? So what will happen, guys? A user with this particular name would be created. A user with this particular name would be created, right? The second one, a user is created. I need to keep some password. I need to keep some password, right? So how do I create a password for a user, guys? So we have a command called passwd and test. Passwd and test, right? So what it will do basically, it will create a password for that particular user account, right? So these are the two things for authentication. And what all other things I can achieve with user management is, so whenever you create any kind of user, by default, a home path, a shell would be automatically created for a user base. Already I discussed a shell, and the home path is nothing but a place where this particular user, if he creates something, that particular things will go and store in this particular location, right? So whenever you create any kind of user, right? So this would be the place where user related files or folders or any kind of things would be stored, right? So what all things will be achieved with user management is, the first thing is home path would be created. This can be modified. This is the first point. The second one is you can modify the shell as well, right? So in Linux, we have like a lot of shells, guys. One is bash, second one is sh, one more is ksh, and one more is csh. Total, we have 4 shells. Shells I've already explained you in the previous class. Shell is nothing but an interaction between a user and the kernel, taking the instructions and sending it to the kernel, right? So likewise, we have 4 shells currently, but the preferred shells we use is bash or shbase. So majority of the Linux operating system will possess bash, but you can use any kind of shell, but the majorly used shell is bash shell. Majorly used shell is a bash shell, right? So this is the second point you can achieve with the user management. And the final thing is, you created a password and you have an option of keeping that password as some expiry date, keeping some expiry date, right? So setting some expiry date for the password, right? So you created a password, it's well and good, but so generally in the real time, what we will do is we will not keep for a password for that user for a long duration. What we will do is we will limit that particular duration, right? So this is my the third option. So 3 things I can achieve with my user management, guys. So any questions, guys, in terms of user management is concerned? We will do the practice, and at the time you will be getting complete clarity.
So yeah, one question is like bash is for bash shell. SS stands for which shell?
Yes, it's shell. So we have bash. Sorry, it is a typo. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bash SS are both are same. It is a typo.
Because the kind of SS we used to use when there you don't know that what is the shell,
No,
then
no.
that time we used
Bash
to use
and
SS. Yeah.
bash and sh both.
Yes. All right. Hello.
Yes, yes. Tell me, Dilip.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. This is Deepak here. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Deepak.
Okay, my question is, when the user is created, who exactly, like, who creates the user in the industry? Like, is it the manager or the user himself?
So which one? Can you repeat, Deepak? Actually, in between your voice is lost. Can you repeat your question once?
Yeah, like who creates this user? For example, I am Deepak. I want to create a user add Deepak. So does it like I myself do it, or the manager will create and give it to me?
No, no. So basically, so this would be taken care by system administrators. Linux system administrators who manages user and group management. But why we are discussing here is while we are doing some kind of projects, then we would be doing these kind of configuration things like user and group management. So going forward, we would be having some kind of real-time projects. At the time, we need to create some users and passwords, right? So for that, if you have some kind of knowledge, it would be easy. That is the reason I was discussing these concepts. But in the real time, there would be some Linux system administrators. They would be creating a user and password by using the same concepts which I am discussing here. If you have your permission, then you can do it. So generally in the real-time projects, a system administrator will do it.
Okay, and what about the password? Are we like he will create and give it to us? So are we supposed to change it later?
Yes, yes. So that password, once you got the password, it would be having a password change in the next time login. The policies would be there. You have to change it.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Sundar here. Hello.
Yes, Sundar. Yeah,
Yeah,
tell me, Sundar.
just I wanted to, if you can repeat this home path, modify the still and setting some experience data like password.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
overview, please.
Yeah. So basically, whenever I create any kind of user, let me create a user for Sundar. So whenever I create a user account, a home path would be created by default for the user account called Sundar. So how the path would be, it would be like home/Sundar, right? So this would be the typical path which will be used whenever a user account Sundar is there, right? So majority of the things, this would be your home location. If you want to create, you would be having complete control. Any files you create, this would be the location it would be happen, right? So it would be created automatically whenever you create a user account.
Okay.
So any other questions, guys, before I move forward?
Sir, why we are using, sir, expiry date for the password?
So expiry date. So in the real time is concerned, we would be having kind of security policies. So that is the reason we keep some kind of policies. So as per the policies states that a password has to be changed every 60 days or 90 days. That is a security policy we generally impose in the real-time projects. That is the reason we keep some kind of expiry date. Even
Okay, sir.
anywhere you see net banking, any websites, it would be the same.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so let's go with the group management, right? So let me start with the group management. So group management. So group management is basically, so what I do is, let me take a simple example to make it clear understanding. So in group management, what I will be doing it is, so I will simply create a group and later on, I will add the users to my group. So the reason for creating a group is, let me explain you. So I am working as a DevOps engineer. So I am working as a DevOps engineer. So my group is DevOps. My group is DevOps, right? So in my DevOps team, we have of 6 people. We have of 6 people in my DevOps team, right? So 6 people means each and every person would be having some user and password. Likewise, we have 6 people, right? So the thing here is, these particular 6 people should have DevOps related access. These 6 people should have DevOps related access, right? So what I would be doing here is, so rather than providing one user at a time, so what I will do is, I will do it on the group level. I will be doing it on the group level, right? So straight away, I would be creating a group called DevOps, and later on I would be assigning those policies on that particular group. The moment I assign that particular policy on the group, whatever the users are there, it would be activated. It would be activated. It would be activated, right? So this is how we generally come into this group management, guys. We generally come into group management, right? So if you see right now, I have 6 users. So right now I have 6 users. So right now we have 6 users, but it is simple by assigning a policy. So policy is nothing but this particular user should have these kind of privileges. These particular user should have these kind of privileges, right? A set of privileges keeping handy on the users. 6 people I can do it, but let's imagine every time in your team the people are incoming, means coming, joining it, right? So every time creating a user password, assigning a policies, if someone is missing something, it would be creating some kind of problems, right? So what we will be doing here is, with the help of group management, I create a group, I create some policy on my group, and later on I will add all the users to this particular group. So the moment the users are added to this group means you would be, that particular users would be having all the privileges as a group, right? Means the access, especially the access, right? So DevOps team would be having set of access, the testing team would be having set of access, and developers would be having set of access, right? That particular access things will be done in a group. And the moment I add my user account, 10 users, these 10 users would be having this group policies, means whatever the access I activated on my group, it would be applicable in the users. In the group management, 2 things we will do it. One thing, creating a group, and the second thing, adding the users to my group. So these are the 2 things we will do it in a group management, right? So this is basically user and group management. So these are the 2 things which generally in the real time Linux system administrator will take care. But going forward, we do some kind of real-time projects. In the process of doing the project implementation, we create some user password. These all things we will do it, groups and all. So at the time, these concepts will be handy for you. And even in the real time, if you have some kind of knowledge, then you can get these things handy without having any kind of help from other people, means other team, right? So this is how basically user and group management flows, guys, right? So any questions in terms of user and group management, guys? Anyone has any kind of questions in terms of user and group management before I move to the next concept? So the next concept would be package installations. Package installations in Linux, right? So basically, the package installation in Linux, right? So package nothing but software, guys. Package nothing but a software, right? So you guys, I believe you have some familiarity in doing some package installation in your Windows. So majority of the folks would be having Windows, I believe so. If someone is having Linux, that would be great. But the one thing, the package nothing but a software. How do you do the installation? Similarly, in Linux, if you want to do any kind of package installation, we have 2 methods. One is RPM. The second one would be YAM, right? So RPM stands for Resource Package Manager. YAM stands for LODOC Update Modify. What is the difference between 2 things? Why we are using RPM? Why we are using YAM? which one is better and which we use generally in the real time, right? So let's take one at a time.
So what about permission concepts?
Yeah, let me finish off this. Next, it will be permission concept. So basically, so RPM is something just installing the package, right? Installing some package, right? So what the intention of RPM is to install some kind of package, right? So simply, if I mention RPM -IVS and just mention some package name like something like .NET, right? So if I mention these particular command, what it will be doing is it will simply install the .NET package. But the disadvantage with RPM is it will not resolve the dependencies. So what will happen is if I am planning to install this particular package, let's say RPM -IVH .NET, right? So what will happen is it will simply throw some error. .NET requires MS SQL, right? So what I need to do, if I want to accomplish .NET package, I have to install MS SQL package. So what I will be doing it, guys, RPM -IVH MS SQL, right? So this is the one which I will be doing. This is the one which I will be doing, right? So again, what will happen? This MS SQL requires some Python package, right? So if I want to accomplish the package installation of a single package, there would be some dependencies. There would be some dependencies associated. If I want to install .NET, means I need to install MS SQL, I need to install Python. Then only I will be able to install .NET package list. So this is just you are able to see 2 packages, but sometimes you will be having a dependency of 10 packages. Sometimes you would be getting some dependency of 10 packages, right? So at that time, it would be difficult to get the things list. It would be difficult to get the things into consideration, right? So RPM is generally used for installing the packages, but the problem with RPM is it would be having some dependencies. It would be having some dependencies that would be a biggest problem to overcome it. End of the day, I would be able to install the package, but the only problem here is I need to spend some time to get all the resolutions of the dependencies, right? So this is a bigger problem. That is the reason we are not using RPM. So majority of the time we use YUM. So YUM stands for Hello Doc Update Modify. This is also for installing the packages, but the benefit about YUM is it will resolve the dependencies automatically without having any kind of human intervention. The packages will be installed automatically. The packages would be installed automatically, right? So how I do it, guys? YUM install .NET. The moment I mention this particular command, it will straight away install your complete package. Yes, it will straight away install your complete package, right? A .NET would be installed. If there is any dependencies, that will also be installed on a single command. Everything would be done based in a single command. All the things would be done, right? So this is the difference between RPM and YUM. Both are used for installing a packages. Installing a package is nothing but software installation, right? Simply what I will do, RPM will not resolve the dependencies, but YUM will resolve the dependencies. So two differences, guys, two differences. This is how we generally do the installation of packages in Linux. Installation of packages in Linux, right? So any questions, guys, till this point from anyone else? Any questions you have?
Sir, why UM is more?
So one at a time. So ask one at a time. I will answer
Yeah.
all the questions.
Okay,
Yeah, I just
continue.
wanted to understand this RPM minus what is that IVH.NET?
So I stands for installation, V for verbose, H for having some kind of install that particular package perfectly. IVH. It's for installing. The keyword is for installation.
Okay. I just want the abbreviation for RPM and YUM.
RPM stands for Resource Package Manager. M stands for Yellow Dog Update Modifier. Clear? Clear with everyone, guys? This package installations and all.
Hi, Shravan.
Yes.
My question is, if we install this package using RPM, like we install .NET after we install MS SQL, and at last Python, after installing these dependencies, can we uninstall all of these with a single command using yum?
Yes, yes. Simple. Yum uninstall .NET.
Okay, so it will uninstall the packages, those are which are installed by RPM, right?
Yes, yes. Just uninstall.
Okay. Yeah,
so like install, we have uninstall. The same thing. During the practicals, I will show you what all the possibilities we have for installation, uninstallation, which is installed, which is not installed. Everything we can do. The background is, these are the two things we have for the installations.
Okay, thank you.
So any other questions, guys, before I move to the next couple of concepts? Okay, so let's go with this permission concept. So yeah. So guys, so by listening this permission keyword, any guesswork you want to make? What you mean by permission? Anyone wants to make any statement here? A permission keyword?
The permissions basically provide access to certain services.
Exactly. So certain accessibility. So having some kind of access, restricting, right? So yes, exactly. So basically, so permissions are something providing some access, providing some restriction, right? So these are the things which so basically for accessing, restricting something, so we generally use permission concept, right? So in Linux, we have three categories of permissions associated. So the one is the read permission, which stands with the letter R. We have a permission called write, which stands with the W. We have a permission called execute, right? So this indicates with X, right? So read permission is something. So this permission, what it will do is you will be able to see that particular file or a folder. Just you will be able to see that particular file or folder, That is about read. And the second permission we have is write. So write, what we will do is you can do some kind of modification. You can do kind of a modification. You can do it, right? You can create the file, you can edit the file, you can do whatever you can do whatever you want, right? That is about write. And the final thing is execute. So execute is something which we will be used for executable permission. Means if you want to execute any kind of script, let's say in Linux, we generally work on shell scripts, right? If I want to execute a script, then I have to provide some executable privileges, which stands with X, right? We have three categories of permissions. We have three different categories of user modes, right? One is user, second one is group, and third one is others, right? So basically, we would be associating these permissions on the users, groups, and others on files and folders, right? So typically, we assign these permissions on the users, groups, others on the condition of files and folders, right? This user should have this accessibility on this particular file. This user should have accessibility on this particular folder, right? So this is how we generally do it. Hey, Bindu, video. So this is how we generally do it basically, right? So user, group, and others on the files and folders, right? So let's go and discuss how to assign these particular permissions on the files and on the folders, right? So let's go and decide. So let's take some component. So let's imagine this is the typical 10-bit block. So let me construct this block. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So every file, guys, whenever you create any kind of thing in Linux, a file would be created with this particular 10 blocks, guys. 10 blocks. 10 blocks basically. 10 blocks you would be getting it, right? The first block you are seeing, right? So this generally indicates whether this is a file or a folder. If this particular block is empty, then we can treat this as a file. If that particular block is written with the letter D, then we call it as a directory. Directory nothing but a folder, guys. Directory nothing but a folder we call it as, right? So two things you have to figure out, which is a file, which is a folder. One thing, the first block, which is empty, then we can call it as a file. And if it indicates with the letter D, then we call it as a directory. And the next comes the first 3 blocks for a user, the next 3 blocks for a group, and the next 3 blocks for the group, right? So user is this one, and a group is this one, and others is this, right? So let's imagine I have a file called, abc.txt. This is the file. What I want to do is, I want my user should have some read-write privileges. User should have read-write privileges. Group should have write execute privileges, and others should have read write execute privileges, right? So users means whoever is owning that particular file would be having that privileges. Whoever you are keeping that particular group would be having that particular privileges. Others means who are not part of this user and group, we call it as others case, means some other user which are not belonging to this user category and the group category, right? Some other means the who are not part of this group and who is not owning this particular file, right? So for assigning any permissions in Linux, we have like a typical values is been defined on these permissions, guys. So generally the read is indicated with the number 4, and write is indicated with the number 2, and execute is indicated with the number 1. Execute is indicated with the number 1, right? So this is the standard values which Linux has defined. So these are the standard values which Linux has defined. These are the standard values which Linux has defined. Using these values, we have to change the permissions on a file or a folder level. Right? So the first thing, I am giving one requirement. User should have read write, group should have read execute, others should have read write executable privileges, right? So for associating for assigning any permissions, we have two concepts basically. Any one of the concept you can use it, but we have two concepts. One is absolute permissions, and the second one would be symbolic permissions. Second one would be symbolic permissions, right? So let's go and discuss what you mean by absolute. Absolute, nothing but representing the permissions with the help of numbers. Symbolic means representing these permissions in terms of numbers, and symbolic means representing the permissions in terms of symbols like plus, minus, and equal, right? So this is the two difference, but end of the day, any method you use it, but the output would be same. The output would be same, right? So let's come back and let's check absolute and how to assign the permissions, right? So I was mentioning user should have read write, group should have read execute, others should have read write executable privileges, right? So how I would be calculating, guys? So user equal to read write. Read stands with the number 4, write stands with the number 2. 4 plus 2, it is 6. This is user, right? And a group. So group, what it is having? Read execute. Read means 4, execute means 1, right? So the value would be 5, right? And others equal to read write execute. 4 plus 2 plus 1, which is equal to 7, which is equal to 7, right? So others would be having 7. So totally, how I would be associating this on this abc.txt, we have a command called chmod, and the value would be 6, 5, and 7 onto the file called abc.txt, right? So chmod is a command. 657 would be the absolute permission, and abc.txt would be the file name, right? These abc.txt would be having the permissions of user would be getting a permission of read write, group would be getting read execute, others would be getting read write execute, right? So this is how we generally allocate some permissions, guys, right? So any questions, guys, from anyone else till this point?
Hello.
Yes,
So,
Deepak.
Sean, my question is, like when the file is created, what are the permissions assigned for that?
So it would be the default permissions like it would be the default permissions like read write, and read.
Okay.
So default permissions. So generally, for every file there would be one permission. For every folder there would be a default permission that I will show you in the practicals. So later on we would be modifying accordingly as per our requirement.
Okay. And one more thing, when a user or a group has a read permission, so he can read that file using cat command, right?
Yes.
So okay, using cat command, if he can read the file, if it has 10 lines of something written,
Yeah.
so can he copy that 10 lines and paste and create his own file?
No, he cannot do it. Just he has only read privileges, right? So he can only read it.
So he cannot copy it.
He cannot copy it. He cannot do any kind of things. He would be restricted. Any modifications, anything, if you want to do it, yes, it has to have write privileges.
Okay.
Modification.
Yeah.
This copy with the help of this git bash and some editors, we can copy. We can take some screenshot. That is an external aspects which we can do it. But internally specific to Linux machine, it will not happen. But if you want to do some kind of things like I'm accessing my Linux machine with the help of git bash. So with the git bash, I can copy the things. Why? Because git bash is a third party tool, right? So from there we can do it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So any other questions, guys? So let me keep some requirement for you. So I want user should have something like a read write executable privileges, and group should have something like read execute, and others should have something like execute write, guys. And can someone tell me what would be the value for us assigning the permissions, guys? Can someone tell me what would be the value?
753.
753. Perfect. So similarly, so this is how we generally do it with the help of absolute permissions, guys. So similarly, so if I want to assign the same kind of permissions, so we have one more method which we call it as symbolic permissions. So symbolic is something where we are defining the permissions in terms of symbols. Right? So straight away in the chmod command, what I have done directly, I've directly kept a command, right? 657 abc.txt. Straight away, I define this particular command. So in the symbolic, what we will be doing is we will be keeping some kind of symbols, right? So user should have read write, group should have something like write, and others will have something like write execute, and the file is abc.txt, right? So this is how we generally do it in the symbolic, and any of the both you can do it. Any of the one of the method you can prefer for doing this kind of things. So end of the day, you have to provide the proper permission. That is the major goal for these particular things. Right? And moreover, these permissions is very much important for a DevOps, guys. Why? Because going forward, we do some kind of real-time project implementation at the time. So the first issue, so whenever we work on any kind of project, we might face some kind of issues, right? So any issues can be resolved with the help of permissions, guys. So the first step in troubleshooting is permissions, right? So this is very much important for a DevOps, guys, especially, right? So this is the background picture about permissions. We have two variants. One is absolute and symbolic. And we have three category of permissions on three different people on two different systems, right? Three different permissions is read, write, execute. Three different people means user group and others, and two different systems is files and folders, right? So this is the typical overall structure of a permissions, guys, right? Any questions from anyone else? Any questions you have?
So can you explain symbolic and absolute once more?
So where did you miss, Darwin? Where did you miss? So I explained twice, thrice. Where did you miss? I was explaining thrice, 3 times I was mentioning. Where did you miss?
The symbol what we are using is symbolic. The number we are using is absolute. This is the difference we are saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's it.
fine.
That's it.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, Dilip.
So my question is, like, who can change those access permissions? Like only the user who creates the
Yeah, user who creates the file and who works on that particular project, that particular person can modify the permissions.
Okay, so no other person is allowed to change the permission of this file.
Yes. So the one thing, if that particular user, let's say I created a file, but even Deepak user having access on this particular file, access in the sense he can change the permission access, then he can modify. But majorly, it would be the person who creates an account, he would be having the complete ownership. The other person would be treated as a secondary owner.
Okay, okay.
So could you please elaborate, execute, what does it proper mean? Because in a file we can provide either read or write. So what is execute?
Okay, so execute basically in Linux, we have some kind of shell scripts. So if you want to execute any kind of scripts, then we would be using an executable privileges. If there is no executable, then you will not be able to execute the script. For executing a script, we will be using an executable permission.
Hello,
Okay,
I'm
who
Sundar
came
here.
under
Yes,
who came under the categories of others? Who are they actually?
So, who are not part. So let's say Ashok is a user who has created a file called abc.txt and he would be the owner. Means apart from Ashok, other people comes into other category.
But in here, I don't have the permission to. Okay, in this context, I don't have the permission to execute that particular file that I have created. But a
Yeah.
user, but others have provided such a permission. That's why I asked who are others or who might come under the category.
Yeah, that's what Ashok. So let's say like Ashok user in a Linux machine, we have Sundar, we have Deepak, we have Dilip. 3 more users are there. These 3 users comes into the category of others. They can execute that particular script. So Ashok is the owner of this file, but Ashok is unable to do it. But as per your condition, you are unable to do it, right? So the people who are having the accessibility on this Linux machine like Dilip, Deepak and Sundar were able to do it. This is how it relates.
Okay.
Sir, we can use any permissions, right? Absolute or symbolic. Otherwise, there is any particular permissions at the time we need to use like that. Sir.
No, so anything you can use. Any of the one you can use it.
It depends upon the user.
Yes. And not about user, but the kind of comfort you have. Right? So it is, if you are comfortable with absolute, go for it. If you are comfortable with symbolic, go for it. Any
Okay.
of the one.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Yes, Sundar. Tell me, Sundar.
Yeah. Just wanted if you can help me with examples for executive, please.
Yeah. So execute basically if you want to execute some scripts. So Linux, we have some shell scripting. So if you want to execute a shell script, then we should have some executable privilege. Shell scripting is nothing but a series of commands in a single place you can execute in a single shot. If you want, if you want to execute the commands in a single shot, then we will create some shell script. If you want to execute a shell script, then we should have some executable privileges. So typically execute is used for executing a scripts. That's it. Only for executing a scripts, we will use executable privileges.
Hello.
Yes.
This in people's part, the user can also be called as a owner of the file.
Yes.
Okay. So will you please explain about this file and directory permissions, like 657 for directory or file?
It's a file.
File.
Yeah.
Then
so anyways, you will be getting detailed clarification in practical, Charlie. So anyways, we do some practicals, right? So this is like a picture which you are seeing. The same picture you would be seeing in the practicals, then you would be getting some clarity as well.
Okay, thank
you. Ashron?
Yeah.
My question is, when you create some files and keep it inside a directory and you give permissions to that directory, so is it inherent to the files? Like if he is able to access that directory, can he use those files too?
No. So directory level you are giving and file level both are different. But if you want to make, yes, we have a facility of doing it. Yes, we can do it. But if you are supplying regularly on the directory, it is not the statement that it should inherent to the files as well. Two things are happening. Two things are possibilities are there. One thing, if you are keeping a directory means the same thing, whatever is inside, it should happen. And the vice versa condition is also there. Even if you keep a directory, the file is, you can keep a different permissions. Two things you can get.
Okay. So is it a bad practice to give permissions? I mean, to put those permissions on directory. So directly we give it to files, right?
Yeah, file would be the best possible way to go. In some scenarios, we don't have any option. Yes, we do it on the directory, but the majority of the cases would be on the file.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I will stop here, guys, for today. Here we have only 3 more minutes left. I will stop here today, and we have left with one more concept, which is ACL. It is hardly takes 5-10 minutes. We will discuss tomorrow. Access control list, and then I will guide you on how to create an account, and later on we will start the practicals, right? So before that, anyone got any kind of chance to create this AWS free tier account, guys? Anyone got any chance to do it? AWS free tier account. Anyone tried? Just an attempt.
Sir, I have tried, sir.
You created, right?
Sir, I've created, but after that it was asking for, I think for the payment method. Just stop there.
Yeah, yeah. So the one thing, so you get a free tier account for 12 months validity, but
Yes,
you
sir.
have.
I've also got mail from AWS, sir.
Yeah, but the
Get
thing
access.
is, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So no worries. Anyways, I will give you the detailed instructions anyways tomorrow, so that you can follow the instruction and you can create it. There won't be any kind of delay. I will keep you the detailed explanation tomorrow at class. Right?
Okay, sir.
Okay, guys. So if no questions, we'll stop here for today, and we'll connect back at same time tomorrow, and we'll finish rest of the things, and we'll kick off
Yeah.
our practicals.